Open your fridge right now. Pull out that carton. Look at the label. 9 times out of 10, it's cow's milk. And you've never really stopped to ask why. There are more than 5,000 kinds of mammals on this planet. Every single one of them makes milk for their babies. And somehow we looked at all of that and just decided the cow. That's the one. Make it the default for everybody. What's weird is the milk we picked isn't even the most nutritious. It's not the closest to what a human baby is built to drink. And for most people on Earth, it's not the one their body handles best. We just chose it a long time ago. And then we never looked back. We're the only animal that does this. Every other mammal stops drinking milk the second it can chew solid food. Wolf pup stops. Lion cub stops. Baby whale stops. We didn't. We kept going. And we started taking milk from other species like it was the most natural thing in the world. 2 out of every 3 adults alive right now still can't handle lactose the way a baby can. That's not a disorder. That's the original setting. The ability to keep drinking milk into adulthood only comes from a genetic mutation that took hold in a few places, mostly Northern Europe, and some pastoral groups in Africa and the Middle East. So if you can pour a glass of cow's milk and feel fine, you're not normal. You're running a rare evolutionary fluke that history just happened to scale up. Today, we're going to pull that story apart. Why the cow ended up on top, which milks got left behind, and what we quietly lost when we made one animal's milk the only one most of us ever taste. Milk isn't one single thing. Every species builds its own version from the ground up, tuned exactly to what its babies need. A seal pup has to pack on blubber fast or it freezes in the ocean. So seal milk comes out nearly half fat, thick as heavy cream. A human baby needs a big brain more than thick insulation. So our milk runs lighter on fat and heavier on the sugar that feeds rapid brain growth. A yak calf born up on the Tibetan Plateau has to hold heat in air so thin and cold it can kill. So yak milk hits more than 7% fat. Feels like liquid butter. The recipe changes with the job. Human milk also carries these complex oligosaccharides that act as prebiotics. They feed the exact bacteria a baby's gut needs. Cow's milk has almost none of them. The whey to casein ratio is completely different too. That's why cow's milk sits heavier in a human baby's stomach and takes longer to digest. These aren't small differences. They're the reason the milk we made default was never the one our bodies were actually designed around. That same precision is what made lactose such a problem for us. Almost every mammal is born able to break lactose down. After weaning, the body just shuts the enzyme off. No more milk to digest, so why keep the machinery running? For most of human history, we followed the same rule. Then, around 7,000 to 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent and among certain pastoral groups in Africa, people started keeping animals for milk. Suddenly, fresh milk was available year-round. The bodies that could keep digesting it into adulthood had a real edge. A tiny mutation near the lactase gene flipped the switch and left it on. Culture forced the change. The human body had to rewrite its own instructions just to keep up with the herds. Look at a map of where that mutation stuck. It lines up almost perfectly with the places that have the longest history of dairying. Northern Europe sits near 90%. East Asia sits under 20. Some African pastoral groups run high. Neighboring farming groups run low. It's coevolution you can still see with your own eyes. Happened in a blink of evolutionary time. And once you start looking past the cow, the catalog of milks we actually drink gets stranger. Goat milk has smaller fat globules that a lot of people find easier on the stomach, but it still carries the same lactose that can turn a glass into a problem. Sheep milk packs nearly double the fat and protein of cow milk. That's why the cheeses taste so dense and rich. Water buffalo milk is even higher in fat. That's the reason authentic mozzarella has that stretch and creaminess you never quite get from the cow version. Camel milk is lower in lactose, higher in vitamin C, and it carries compounds that act a little like insulin. Horse and donkey milk sit closest of all to human breast milk. In parts of ancient Europe, they even poured donkey milk into bottles for babies when a mother couldn't nurse. Yak milk on the high plateau is so rich it becomes the base for butter tea. Reindeer milk in the far north comes out over 20% fat, closer to cream than anything you'd pour on cereal. Each one is a different answer to the same question. What does this particular baby need to live? And every one of them sat right there while we built an entire global system around the single animal that just happened to give the most volume. The cow didn't win because its milk was better. It won because of volume, scale, and the moment in history when the decision got locked in. A single modern dairy cow can put out 6 or 7 gallons a day. A goat gives less than 1. A sheep gives even less. An average camel can't come close. When early farmers in temperate Europe were trying to feed growing settled populations, that difference in raw output decided everything. Cows also fit the landscape. They could turn wide stretches of pasture that wouldn't grow crops into food humans could actually use. Then European ships carried that whole system across the oceans. Cattle went to the Americas, to Australia, to parts of Africa and Asia. Local milk traditions that had worked for centuries got pushed aside. In the 20th century, it went even deeper. School milk programs across Europe and the United States systematically taught entire generations that cow's milk was the healthy, normal choice. The dairy industry helped shape the official nutrition guidelines, so calcium from cow's milk became treated as the single reliable source. Colonialism and globalization didn't just spread the animal, they spread the idea that this one milk was the standard for the whole planet. Traditions built around horse, camel, and buffalo quietly faded into the background. Cows also won because we turned them into highly efficient mass production machines. But that efficiency comes with a heavier environmental bill. More methane, more land, more water than goats, sheep, or camels need in a lot of the ecosystems where those animals originally thrived. And that brings us to the milks we never drink at all. Lion milk is rich and fatty. Elephant milk exists. Zebra milk exists. Kangaroo milk is one of the most complicated formulas nature ever built. It actually changes composition from one teat to another, depending on the age of the joey. Moose milk is so high in fat, it borders on cream. None of these are poisonous. We just never managed to bring the animals into the kind of steady, large-scale relationship that milking requires. Zebra came closest. People tried more than once. But the animal's fear responses and stubborn temperament kept shutting the process down. Kangaroos stayed wild. Their intricate milk forever calibrated only for a joey, never for a human dairy barn. The short list of animals we actually milk share a rare cluster of traits. They tolerate close handling. They keep producing after their own young are weaned. And they give enough volume to make the work worthwhile. Most mammals don't clear that bar. So their milk stays off the table, no matter how interesting it might be. What we lost isn't only nutrition or history. We lost entire flavors and textures that once belonged to everyday life. Real buffalo mozzarella stretches and pulls in a way the cow version never quite matches. Sheep's milk cheeses carry a depth and richness that feels almost like the animal concentrated the landscape into every bite. Camel milk tastes slightly salty and clean. Fermented horse milk is gently sweet and tangy in a way nothing in a standard supermarket can copy. These weren't exotic novelties. They were ordinary to the people who lived with those animals. We didn't just choose one milk. We let a whole range of tastes, textures, and quiet daily pleasures slip away without noticing. The milk in your coffee this morning, or poured over your cereal, isn't the best biological choice available. It's a historical accident that managed to put on the clothes of inevitability and walk around like it had always been the only option. Donkey milk sits closer to what a human baby is actually built to drink than anything that comes from a cow. Sheep milk and buffalo milk carry far more fat and protein in every pore. Camel milk brings compounds and a vitamin profile that cow milk simply never developed. None of those facts made it onto the label of the carton in your fridge. We didn't just choose one type of milk. We unconsciously closed the door on hundreds of possible flavors, nutrients, and ways of living that once existed on this planet. Somewhere in Central Asia right now, a person is drinking fermented horse milk and treating it like the most ordinary part of the day. No one around them is questioning it. No one is calling it exotic. Meanwhile, most of us grew up believing cow's milk was the single solid truth about what milk is supposed to be. Next time you pour a glass or splash some into your coffee, just pause for a second. Ask yourself whether this is really a choice or simply a hand-me-down we never thought to question. If this changed the way you look at the carton in your fridge, go ahead and hit like. Drop a comment and tell me which animal's milk you'd actually want to try if you could. And if you want to keep pulling apart the other everyday foods we treat like permanent truth when they're mostly just history that's scaled up, stick around and subscribe.